Hi, everybody, and welcome to another edition of our Big Time Boxing Show. And on this one, we're going to have a slightly different focus. I thought it would be fun to explore Las Vegas and boxing's impact on it, especially given the fact that later this week on February 1st, we're going to be having a big fight here in Las Vegas at the T-Mobile Arena with David Benavidez taking on David Morrell in a highly anticipated light heavyweight matchup. And I thought, let's look at the symbiotic relationship between Las Vegas and the world of boxing. And who better to do it with than the gentleman who is the preeminent entertainment writer in all of America. He writes a daily column in the Las Vegas Review-Journal here, also does a regular podcast, and is the best authority on entertainment in Las Vegas, and also happens to have a great history as a sports writer, both here in Las Vegas and also in California. So he's got it covered on both ends. Let me introduce you to my good friend and superb journalist, John Katsilometes. Hi, John.
Hello, Al. It's an honor to be with you in any context. I'm excited about this. I'm really pleased and grateful that you had me on.
Yeah, this is fun. I really was looking forward to this because it's a topic that I think is kind of fascinating, and I think fascinates a lot of people because everybody's interested in Las Vegas. And boxing and Las Vegas, as I mentioned, have this fascinating relationship that has gone pretty far back. And, boxing was here as early as the 50s and the 60s, but it really started to become a factor in the Las Vegas entertainment scene in the 70s and the 80s. And the 80s was when I joined it, and was around for those great fights between the four kings, Hagler, Hearns, Leonard, Duran. And the 1980s was a golden era for boxing, and a golden era for boxing in Las Vegas. That was kind of the beginning of this relationship, wasn't it?
Yes, it was. You're right, Al. We're known today. Las Vegas is presenting itself as the entertainment and sports capital of the world now. As you know, we're residents. We know the whole evolution of this. But before there were the Raiders, and before there were the Golden Knights, and before we were exploring, Major League sports leagues, we were a great sports event city, in large part because of boxing. Las Vegas is a big boxing destination and city worldwide, and for all the reasons you mentioned. So I think people, sometimes lose sight of the fact that Las Vegas had already set the stage for showing it could do big events, big sporting events. Long before the Super Bowl was here, and long before F1 came here, we were hosting regular boxing events in those decades, all the way through to when I moved to Las Vegas in 1996. So great fights continually, and combat sports generally in Las Vegas. So we own that. We've had that reputation deservedly for quite some time in Las Vegas, and that helped. I think the boxing affiliation and the way we were able to stage events in Las Vegas helped set this. One of the pieces that helped set the stage for all of the big sports that came after.
That is a really, really good salient point, because when I was doing radio on the ESPN affiliate in Las Vegas in the early 2000s, and we would have these conversations, people could, Las Vegas be the site of a major league team in any of the major league sports? Those fights were kind of used as the example. Well, look, people come and they're sports fans. Now, granted, they're one-off events, but you're right. They provided kind of the foundation for that. And then as boxing evolved, the stars in the sport helped drive it. De La Hoya, first the Four Kings, then Oscar De La Hoya and Mike Tyson, Floyd Mayweather, and now Canelo Alvarez. So you cover stars every day, and there's so many of them that come to Las Vegas, and how that has evolved is fascinating. And those stars in boxing, it's kind of like they have their own headliners, just like the entertainment world, right?
Yeah, exactly. I remember Mayweather bringing Justin Bieber into the ring, for example, for his fights. Because he could. We have a lot
exactly.
of I remember walking around one fight or another. It might have been a Manny Pacquiao fight, and seeing Leonardo DiCaprio, there Steve Buscemi in my area, just Charles Barkley. They were all shapes and sizes of these superstars who were in town. You know, the rap superstars, Tiesto, I've seen at fights. And it is a great galvanizing point. There's the event, and then there's the spectacle that is around the event. And I've really picked this up. You know, we talk about where boxing is in the Las Vegas sports and entertainment context. What we've really seen are the post-fight parties at the nightclubs that just blow up.
Right.
They're events unto themselves. And I'll tell you, brother, when you see the Gypsy King walk into Hakkasan after winning, after knocking out Deontay Wilder, that is an event, brother. That is a happening when those guys come into these places. Canelo, after one of his championship wins, any of them over at Excess Nightclub at Wynn Las Vegas, another great example. It's bedlam, and all those people are there just to have some sort of peripheral connection to the title fights, you know. And it's part of the entertainment scene in Las Vegas unto itself. You know, those parties that you could have Drake hosting. We had Steve Aoki at the Gypsy King at Hakkasan when that fight right before COVID shut down. Those are examples, but it's part of the spectacle of Las Vegas. It already exists in Las Vegas. Boxing just finds a way to take advantage of it.
Yeah, and that speaks to each of them being stars, the Furies, the Canelos, the Tysons, all the rest of them, stars that are part of that firmament of stars that are here in Las Vegas.
Yeah, well, this has been going on for generations. You know, get the you want to be. It used to be on those pay-per-view or even the remote telecasts, the closed circuit telecasts. You wanted to look into those first few rows and see who was seated within the camera shot. So you see Frank Sinatra, Johnny Carson, those types of people. You'd see the Bill Cosbys of the world, and they were part of the tableau of the event. And they were consequential events too. I mean, these were important fights within the boxing community, and to be seen there was a real, that front row seats at the Caesar's Palace fights was a place to be, right?
Oh yeah. I don't know if I ever told you this story, but Gary Shandling, once when I interviewed him, told me a story, or maybe we were at lunch, I don't remember, but he told me a story about how he's of course a huge boxing fan and owned a boxing gym with Peter Berg, and boxing is a big part of his life. He was opening for Joan Rivers when the Hagler-Hearns fight happened. And it was in the parking lot of Caesar's Palace. So he went to the fight, but of course, he said that fight worked out perfectly because I only had time for a 3-round fight. I had to run back and open for Joan Rivers. He said, so I sent something through the airwaves that told them you have to end this fight in about 4 rounds. They got him back in time to open for Joan Rivers. Yeah,
There's one thing to bet the under or bet a prop bet on the rounds, but he's living it.
To bet it on your job. And at that time, that was a pretty important gig for him. I said, you were cutting that close. He said, yeah, I was.
No doubt about it. That's really gambling there.
Yeah. So, John, the way the casinos see boxing vis-a-vis entertainment, does the boxing itself have like the rodeo when it comes to town and other things like that, have an impact, of course, an economic impact on the city, which boxing does, and has an impact on the entertainment? It has an impact on who is booked during that time.
Definitely.
How well will they be attended? Do big boxing matches similarly work that way?
Yeah, they do, and especially depending on the culture of the champion who's on the main event card. I go back to Ricky Hatton. Remember when Ricky Hatton was fighting here? He fought Manny Pacquiao, and there was a huge culture of fans from the UK and Great Britain who followed him over here. And then they weren't going to the fight, but all of a sudden there were a lot of brew pubs that were putting on specialty events related to the fight and catering to that crowd. The acts tended to be to satisfy that group. Canelo's a great example. He's he's so popular among the Latin community that there's, you might see Manya booked at MGM Grand Garden the same weekend that he's fighting at T-Mobile and selling out there just to capture that audience. We have a lot of that happening where Latin and parties will be tied to a Canelo fight. And that is a direct result of his appeal as a fighter and a cultural figure inside his culture. But yeah, these casinos are pretty smart. They get it. They see people
Yeah.
when they're traveling here. When they're traveling here, it's like, oh, there's a lot of this particular culture. Maybe we should, set up some specials and some opportunities for them to have fun, even if they're not going to the fight. To enjoy the whole atmosphere of Las Vegas during fight week. And that has happened, especially in Canelo's case.
Yeah. Now, your background is as a sports writer. You were a sports writer in California, and you wrote sports when you came here to Las Vegas before 2016, when you got your regular
Mhm.
entertainment column. And you covered, both from the sports and the entertainment angle, a couple of the boxing matches here. You especially had intriguing experiences with Mike Tyson and the Evander Holyfield fights.
Yeah, I got to know them. When I moved to Las Vegas, that was a secondary beat for me I was a sports writer at the Review Journal from 96 to 98. Specifically, my primary beat was UNLV basketball. My secondary beat was Las Vegas Motor Speedway. But after
Mm.
that, I was everywhere, and especially with boxing. So I covered a lot of, we talked about De La Hoya and Julio Cesar Chavez. That was the first fight I covered. It's sidebars, right in sidebars, color pieces, color, a
Yeah.
lot of color. And, I was at Caesar's Palace. I went to, I saw Felix Trinidad fight over at the Thomas and Mack Center against De La Hoya. A lot of those types of fights. The first big heavyweight fight I covered here was the first Tyson-Holyfield fight at the MGM Grand Garden arena when Holyfield knocked him out in the 11th round, I think it was. And I had been following Tyson around, all week and writing about him, and got to know Don King. Spent some quality time with Don King. Very,
Who
as you
doesn't who
know,
doesn't want to have quality time with Don King, right?
I'm like, you don't have to yell, Don, all the time. No, you know this, but I'm like, this is not the. I'm just here to, have a conversation. Only in America. What's your surname? What is that? And I said, it's Greek. Only in America can a young Greek man come and cover this fight. And I go, I was born in Pullman, Washington. It's okay though. We'll just go with it. So it was a lot of the color.
Yeah.
Sometimes, man, always thought a great documentary would be just to put a GoPro on Don King's forehead and follow him around during fight week. But I got to know Tyson. We did a press conference at his house the week of the first Holyfield Tyson fight, and I remember we went in a shuttle, and the shuttle was had drapes around it, black drapes, so you couldn't see where we were going. We didn't want any of the reporters to know where Mike Tyson lived, so we were in there. And we get out, and we were into a garage and go into his home. And I was sitting there. They had all this food laid out, all this big buffet, and it seems to like it was Church's chicken or something like that. It was just a lot of food. And I'm standing there, and I think it was like Kevin Iole was there, and those, the big boxing writers were all hanging around. I'm standing there, and all of a sudden this person comes up to my left and goes, "I think Don's really stupid for setting this thing up and having it here for this." And he's like, "I think this is the dumbest thing I've ever seen in my life." And I'm turning, it's Tyson. He's standing there, like waiting for food, like waiting in the buffet line. I go, "Well, you should be able to cut the line, right? I mean, isn't this your?" The first Tyson Holyfield fight was so great. I mean, everybody wanted to see a good fight because at the time Holyfield was a
Yeah.
prohibitive underdog. And when
Yeah.
he knocked down Tyson, he knocked him down, I think it was either at the end of the 10th or early in the 11th round. Anyway, he
Mhm.
put him down, and that played out. I mean, you've heard
Yeah.
this. It was like white noise. It was just like everybody going crazy inside the Grand Garden Arena. And I'm like, wow, every once in a while boxing has a fight like this. It keeps it going. I was like, this
Yeah.
is going to carry the sport for a while, a great heavyweight fight. And then we had the next fight where of course, we all know what happened there, and the bite night, and
Now
having to cover
let
what.
me ask you about that earbuddy thing, because
Yeah.
here we have this event that spills over into the casino, and in a big way,
Mhm.
gunshots presumably, and the casino has to be shut down. That's a cataclysmic event for any major casino. How did the casino industry look at that, and did that change their view, or have they ever had a view of like, okay, well, boxing, can have its difficult side? How did they view all that?
Well, it was interesting in that particular case. What happened was something completely unexpected happens in the ring. that sets
Hmm.
a whole chain of reaction in motion. Fortunately, the folks, even in those days at MGM Grand, they're ready, pretty much prepared with their infrastructure for most of anything that can happen
Right.
inside an event like that. I mean, it was remarkably scary. Don't get me wrong, but
Yeah.
what happened that night was that the thing turns over and the crowd starts going crazy, and I had to chase. You talked about gunshots, and we all of a sudden are becoming crime reporters, instead of sports writers. You know, I just remember the quote that came up. This was the lead to my column, my story that day. Is like 5 days ago, Mike Tyson said he was tired of being treated like some kind of an animal in the ring, and then tonight he's bitten both ears of his opponent.
That's a great
You make
lead.
the call. You make the call.
Yeah.
So anyway, we go out, and this is before the advent of, we had very limited technology. I
Sure.
think I had a cellular phone at that time. I think we were issued cell phones at the time, so we're able to communicate that just on our phones. But it was so we had heard about gunshots. That was one thing that happened. I said check on gunshots, and they said it coming from MGM Grand. And what had happened was the way I understood it and looking into it, it was in the lobby area. It was in the lobby of the MGM Grand Garden itself, and somebody had dropped cases of champagne in the confusion, that were being taken into the post party in the ballroom there. When that happened, a lot of those bottles blew up. You know, it
Oh,
sounded like
interesting.
gunfire. There's a lot of things inside casinos that sound like gunfire, by the way, we've learned over the years. Those metal signs.
Yeah.
And everybody thinks the worst. That's what
Wow.
happened, as I understood it. I never heard anybody discharging a weapon. But when that happened, a lot of people pulled out weapons who probably maybe shouldn't have had weapons. And,
Good
and
point.
everybody's looking, that was what was being relayed to me. But we've had that happen subsequently. We had that happen after Canelo Mayweather fight
Right.
at
Right.
MGM Grand, remember?
Yeah.
There was a big disruption. Those signs, it was the signage outside the Blizz Yogurt, of all places, that walkway that leads into the Grand
Right.
Garden, the yogurt place. They have those signage up, this is the way to media check-in. This is, over here is the VIP, and there are these giant metal promotional signs. And one of them fell over and went boom. And those things are loud. And then everybody freaked. And so it's we've
That's
seen it.
wild.
We've seen it at stage shows. It happened at Mad Apple a few years ago. Somebody knocked over a sign outside Mad Apple in New York, and they thought there was gunfire out in front of the theater. So anyway, I don't know. Maybe rubberize those things. I don't know. But that was my memory of that night.
Did it
and
have any did that with among the casino execs and the people that are part of the entertainment industry and of course the casino industry overall, did that give them any pause about boxing even for a moment, or did they just assume that's part of the cost of doing business with the
you
sport?
know, as I recall, I think it was the latter. I think, as I recall, there was a lot of post-mortem about how do we make this happen in a safe way. I don't think it was that
Yeah.
we weren't going to be able to stage events. It's such a rare occurrence. But another
Yeah, it
thing
wasn't
was
it
they were,
wasn't a normal everyday thing that happened in boxing, no. Yeah.
no, you had
The
to kind of
irony
live
is
through it
the irony
to
is that
expect it.
here's the weird part. You were at that event. I wasn't. I was at the first Tyson Holyfield, and it's funny. I missed all the whole chaos and whatever. I was doing a
Wow.
tournament. I almost lost my job at ESPN over this. I was, I had it was an ESPN event, but it was called Boxino, and I was hired separately to do it. But it was on ESPN, and I had a contract, and had, and then they said, well, no, but now all of a sudden there's Holyfield Tyson. We want you to cover that for SportsCenter. And I said, well, I have a contract with these people. And oh, by the way, they were paying me way more money for that than I would have gotten to go cover sport. There would have been a little stipend
Really?
extra on my thing. So I said, no, I think I'll go to Puerto Rico and to the Foxino.
No
It's okay.
kidding.
I've seen all these big fights. They weren't too happy, but they had to live with it. And then, of course, all the chaos ensued. So, you're there for a big
Who did,
boxing event. I'm not.
so who was on the broadcast that night? Who did the Jim
I
Gray
wanted. It
was
had to be
on
the
it.
HBO crew, Jim Lampley and that whole crew.
I remember Jim
On
Gray was
there.
doing the
Now in
post show,
SportsCenter, the part I was supposed to do, Charlie Steiner covered that event.
right?
and I don't know who they got to replace me. I can't even remember, but for the Sports Center, because I wasn't going to do the fight, just to cover for ESPN. But yeah, it's odd that you were there and I wasn't for that one.
That's really, really remarkable.
Yeah.
You know, one thing about the crisscrossing reports that night on the second fight, on the fight night, was I was being asked, you know, we heard that Emmett Smith threw a beer bottle into the ring. You know, there was that kind of thing. And it turned out it was a guy wearing an Emmett Smith jersey who looked a lot like Emmett Smith. And I'm like, you know
That's
what? I doubt that if the real Emmett Smith were here, I don't think he'd be wearing his Cowboys jersey.
No, sure not.
There was a lot of that, though. There was a lot of checking down and figuring it out. But another thing was on the pay-per-view on that. People were asking to get a refund, you know, because the fight had been screwed up. And I had to chase that the next day. I had to get a comment. And I actually talked to the people at the hotel about if they had been asked about ticket refunds. And it wasn't happening. And I said, you know what? I reasoned that if you were going to be, if you had a fight that you had recorded in some way or were present for, that you wanted to save for posterity, it would be the fight night fight. You know,
Yeah.
you were part of history. You don't get a refund for being a part of history. You know, it's just what happens. But anyway, yeah.
But yeah, it's intriguing. Boxing fans and like Las Vegas as a boxing venue for all the obvious reasons. And boxing, while the sport has changed and it's become more of a niche sport to a great degree, though it goes up and down at various times. And now some of the big fights being sent to the Middle East. But it seems to me that, and you can speak to this better than I, that from the entertainment standpoint of the gaming industry here, boxing still plays an important role in how they see, again, even though they have all these other sports, which we've pointed out, and many other things, it seems like boxing still plays a pretty key role in them wanting it to be in Las Vegas.
Yeah, you know, I think that the idea of having a major title fight in Las Vegas is a very marketable thing. It's got a history that is undeniable. You know, and you see it a lot. You know, like when, for example, U2 comes to Las Vegas and they do their Atomic City video here. You know, they do it down here where I am downtown at the Fremont Street in front of the plaza, and they do the song, and the song's about Las Vegas, which they refer to as Atomic City. But at the end of that song, there's a big fight tonight. There's a big fight going on, and there's one tonight. However that lyric goes, that's how they end the song. You know, they're talking about all these touch points of Las Vegas. There's a big fight, and we're going to be there tonight. That was the thing to do in their depiction. You know, this Irish superstar rock band still goes there when they're talking about Las Vegas. It's boxing.
That is intriguing. That speaks to two things. First of all, it speaks to John Katsilometes always getting to the main point of every story. And number two, it speaks to the importance of it, because if U2 is using that as its reference, then you got to kind of understand that. How entertainment and boxing mixed together, I have to say, though, on a very small level, I have lived that, because way back in 1987, I did the first music show that I ever did, just before the Hackman Leonard fight I forget the name of the lounge at Caesar's Palace.
I think it was the Olympia Lounge, wasn't it?
Yeah, the Olympic Lounge. That's the one. Thank you. This speaks to the 1980s. You remembered where I was more than I did. Okay. So I may have lost part of that decade, John.
Insiders say Marion Barry was there at that show.
Yeah.
Confirm or deny?
Well, I could tell her story. You know, both men have passed away, and John's referring to a story I talk about in my book. Should I tell it? I guess I should. It's a funny story.
For it. Yeah,
I'm up there entertaining, and it's the 1980s, right? And I look down, and in the front row seat, there's Marion Barry, the former mayor of Washington, and Butch Lewis, the boxing promoter, there with a tux and no shirt, as he always would be. And they're sitting in the front row. And this is my first show ever in Las Vegas. And, you know, here I am up on stage. There's all these celebrities there, you know, from Michael Landon to John Madden, to anybody you could think of that was at the fight. Smokey Robinson was there. It was crazy, right? So, Yeah, I mean, it's nuts. So I'm up on the stage and I'm in like the third song and I'm starting to feel like, okay, this is going okay, I'm good. And I'm in the middle of some song. It had special lyrics and everything. I look down and there's Marion Barry uh, and Butch Lewis, and they have these giant lines of cocaine on the table. And I see Butch Lewis go down, do a line, look up at me and smile. I'm like, okay. And I could barely remember the lyric. And to show you what happened was everybody was noticing this, right? And
Oh
and
my!
the way Caesars handled it was, it wasn't like somebody rushed in. Some guy very gently creeped over, knelt down at the table, and I could see them talking to him. It was in between songs, and I'm sure he was trying to say, "Look, don't do that here. This is not really the place." But that story, I think that story kind of typifies the '80s in.
In so many ways. Oh my God! Talk about a
I mean,
piece of history that would
it's
not.
a typified. So yeah. So I had a fun experience doing that, and by the way, this weekend I will be continuing my tradition of doing shows before big fights, because before the Morrell Benavidez on Thursday, January 30th, I will be at the Tuscany Casino doing shows at 8 and 9:30.
You got to plug that. Okay,
Yeah,
okay.
so we're gonna have some fun with that, and we're gonna have a lot of the boxing folks will be over there. And you were even kind enough once to come and introduce me when I did a show. So
You
I
know,
had
I got to
an
get that in the
entertainment
column.
royalty.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I think I just did it without planning. I wasn't even invited. But I, uh, I know that we got to get this in the column, and those are really, really fun nights. They're really
It's
fun.
fun.
Yeah.
We have a good time. And it gives the first time I ever did it, it was that I was having dinner with the president of Caesar's Palace and some people, and Barry McGuigan and had his dad, who was a pub singer, had performed for 3 nights in that Olympic Lounge before Barry McGuigan fought. And this was back when I just moved. I was coming into Las Vegas a bunch of times, and I would sit in, as people do in some of the places. And I sat in Caesar's Palace and sang a song. And the president of Caesar's Palace said, "Don't you sing?" And I said, "Well, yeah, I sit in with people." He said, "Oh, we're going to have you do what Barry McGuigan's dad did here." And
Yeah.
I said, "Oh,
Hmm.
really?" Now, John will understand better than anyone. I didn't have an act. I didn't have a band. I had nothing. And this was 3 months before the Hagler Leonard fight. Somehow I managed to make it work. I don't know how, but
Well,
it was fun.
you're,
But I am
and that
not,
interaction is still going on. So yeah,
yeah, so
yeah,
it's fun.
it's great.
On a much grander scale than all that, the entertainment industry and boxing has had this symbiotic relationship. And how would you put in a nutshell what boxing and the entertainment here in Las Vegas, what they mean to each other?
I think that to me, I think that the boxing event is like the light to so many entertainers that come into Las Vegas, and so there's so much around it. I think that's where you begin, and I think like we talked about, you have entertainment that is tied to the fight. You have parties that are tied to the post fight. You have events that
Hmm.
are going on all week long. The core of this is the fight itself. That's the
Hmm.
galvanizing point. But it's just like everything else that we've done as we've gone
Yeah.
forward. All these other spectacles that we've had, everything from motorsports to the NFL. We're going to have the college football championship here in 27.
Right.
We've just learned that's going to be a big thing. Fighting the boxing events, the major title fights were the template for all that. When you expand outside the sport, this is not just for hardcore boxing fans. This is for people who are peripherally interested in a fight but want to
Yeah.
hang out and be around some spectacle in Las Vegas. And that's what it is. That's what we do really well here. Is we build events around the center event, and that's what the first example of that really was the major title fights, was boxing beginning in the probably the 60s, 70s, and still continuing. That's how I look at it.
Yeah, very good. That's great. John Katsilometes, for those of you who either visit Las Vegas, you can also see his columns online from the Las Vegas Review Journal. So wherever you live, you can see his columns. And by the way, they have such value to everyone because he's talking about all the great superstars, and the stories mean something whether you're here or not here. You can see his columns in the Las Vegas Review Journal and online, and your podcast, which is great, and that's on the Review Journal page, correct?
It's right below my column right now. We haven't done one in a while, but I'm hoping to relaunch it. And we're doing a new relaunch of our entertainment strategy at the RJ, so we're probably bringing it back in some form. But yeah, there's 100 and something episodes right below the column online. Yeah,
There, yeah,
you're on
100,
there.
100
You're on
episodes
there, a
of
couple of us.
entertainment.
Yeah,
Pardon?
and I said you're on there. We did a
Yeah,
couple of podcasts.
we did one together.
Podcasts. Yeah, and but I really love doing it. People like yourself, Al, make it so worthwhile. I've had a very, I'm so grateful to have had a blessed career here. And you know, I remember one time I was walking into a fight with you. I think we had arrived together. Did we ride the monorail together? Did you
Yeah,
ever
I
ride the
think that was
monorail?
it. Yeah.
Here's the story. We went to a fight, and I want to say, I think it was a Pacquiao fight. Okay?
Yeah, I think so.
At MGM Grand. And we happened to be on the monorail together, and I didn't really know you very well. It was like in '09 maybe.
Mm-hmm.
Walked from the monorail station into the media center with you. We had already been credentialed. The energy that came at you when I walked into that room to AlBernstein, I just kind of backed away. I said, okay, I'm done here. I said, I'll be talking about it later. Please, people come to spend time with
That's funny.
I was like,
Well,
we're in his home court.
yeah, we were in my
Seriously.
territory. Listen,
I was like, okay.
yeah, and I have to turn it around because, and this is not just to be blowing smoke. When I go with you to entertainment events here in Las Vegas, it's the reverse of that because John is a larger than life figure for the entertainment industry here in Las Vegas for sure. But we've had a good time, and one of the joys, I'm just going to say this, one of the joys for me in the last decade and a half here in Las Vegas has been getting to know you, John, and having you as a friend, and also kind of being able to just chat with you on a social basis to hear all the goings on and entertainment and get your insights like you've given here, you know, on the show.
Well, we always have the cool hang, right? I mean, we sometimes after we get done talking to each other, I say, "Man, that should have been recorded."
Yeah, exactly.
Real people.
Well,
You're a treasure. You're a treasure in Las Vegas. You're a treasure in the world of boxing and a great friend. And I can never do enough. I want to be there at that Thursday show. I'm dialing up my seat right now.
We're gonna have a lot of Randy. It's going to be fun. Randy Couture is coming. Jimmy Lennon Jr. is going to be on hand. Some boxers and a lot of folks. So we should have a fun time at the Tuscany on Thursday, the 30th. But more important than that, this has been a delightful time hearing your insights into entertainment and boxing. And I think for a lot of people who like that topic and who come to Las Vegas for boxing, I think a lot of this insight will certainly be welcomed by them. So I appreciate it. Again, check out John's column at the Las Vegas Review Journal, and when he gets his, and check out all the podcasts from before, because it doesn't matter whether one's being done now, they're all great, and they all are with great personalities and celebrities on every level of entertainment and sports. So you hear fascinating stories all along. John, thank you so much for taking the time to do this.
Anytime. I'll just spend time with you. Anytime.
All right. Thank you. So that was John Katsilometes. I hope you enjoyed that. I sure did. That's one of my favorite interviews that I've done on this show. I can tell you that right now. And we will, of course, see this weekend with the David Benavidez, David Morrell fight, how Las Vegas welcomes boxing. That should be a very good card, by the way. I think that could be a Fight of the Year candidate. And underneath it, Brandon Figueroa and Stephen Fulton Jr. with a terrific fight as well. Well, we'll have more for you on our Big Time Boxing show as we continue, and we'll see you next time.